Well, yeah, I mean, when I get in conversation with Zionists, I have a Zionist friend who keeps saying, well, the Arabs how much land were the Arabs giving? Why can't the Arabs be generous? My immediate response is, well, why wasn't the United States generous? Why not New York and Connecticut or something? Or New Mexico and Arizona, which were actually asked for. The Zionist movement at one point asked the United States if it would be willing to give up Arizona and New Mexico and create a Jewish state. And the United States said no, but we're willing to let you do it in Palestine. So we're willing to be generous with other people's stuff, but not our own. And that's the thing that I don't get about the United States and our policy towards Israel. Okay, if it's such a good idea, why don't we do it here? Let's give the Israelis a homeland here that'll be Jewish only, and if you're not Jewish, you have to get out. And when you put it in those terms, suddenly it becomes maybe not so desirable. And then the other question is, Palestine obviously had nothing to do with the Holocaust. We're obviously doing this in part because of the Holocaust. Well, why don't we put it in Germany then? Why didn't we carve off a chunk of northern Germany and call it New Israel? Hamburg could have become New Jerusalem and just give them northern Germany, right? That only seems fair, especially since most of the Jews that we're talking about were either American Jews, and most of them were of German descent, or they were European Jews, and most of them were of German descent, right? There's a reason why Yiddish was the dominant Jewish language in Europe. Yiddish is just German with a Jewish accent and some Hebrew words. And Yiddish is also an awesome language, by the way. Some of the coolest words ever are Yiddish. But anyway, it's a different story.
Didn't they want to be close to Jerusalem and all that stuff like that?
Okay. But then you say, well, so then it's a religious thing, but most Zionists will go, no, this isn't about religion. And it's like, well, if it's not about religion, why do you want to be so close to Jerusalem? Clearly it's about religion. But then they say, no, I'm an atheist, or I'm a secularist Jew, and I'm a Zionist. And it's like, well, then why did it have to be Jerusalem? This was our homeland. This was your homeland? You're 2,000 years old? I don't understand. Here's the twist. The majority of Palestinians are of Jewish descent and are ethnically more Jewish than the European and American Jews who went and created Israel. So every time a Palestinian is murdered by an Israeli, a person who's more Jewish is killed by a person who's less Jewish. It's true that the Israeli is actually practicing Judaism or is a secular Jew. And it's true that those Palestinians are Christians and Muslims whose ancestors converted from Judaism to Christianity and Islam. But it's just a weird, ironic twist. I mean, it's embittering how ironic it is. It just doesn't make any sense. And here's the problem. I don't think I said this plainly last time, so I'll say it, and then I'll let you go because I'm way over. But I'm sorry. Let me just do this. The problem is if you said, okay, we're going to create a new state, and it'll be secular. It's not for one religion anymore. It'll be a democracy, secular, and there'll be rights for all minorities. And by the way, Muammar Gaddafi actually suggested calling it Isratin. Israel and Palestine, Isratin. So, it sounds terrible to me, but whatever. I don't care what you want to call this thing. Call it Israel, call it Palestine, call it Isratin, call it Israel, Palestine with a hyphenation like your parents did with you. I don't care. Whatever it is that makes you happy. But if you did it, suddenly there'd be 13 million Palestinians who are Christian and Muslim. I think it's like 10% Christian, 90% Muslim. And then there'd be 6 million Jews. So the Jews would become an instant minority in that state. And they don't want that to happen. That's why they're fighting the Palestinians. They're not fighting the Palestinians because the Palestinians are attacking them. The Palestinians aren't attacking them. They're fighting the Palestinians because they don't want to have Palestine integrated with them because they'll instantly lose their majority. There are actually 7 million Palestinians living in Palestine and Israel. But 5 million are confined to the concentration camp that we call the Gaza Strip. It's just a concentration camp. And then the ghetto that we call the West Bank. It's basically a bunch of little ghetto pockets. And so by doing that, what the Israelis have done is they've created a situation where the natives are in internal exile. Right? They're still in Palestine, they're just not in their homes. Their homes are in Haifa or Jaffa or Jerusalem. And so they're displaced inside their own country as a majority, but with no rights to citizenship. This is like the most nasty thing since apartheid Israel and apartheid South Africa. It might be worse than apartheid South Africa in some ways. In fact, it is when you think about it, because at least in the case of apartheid Israel, there was. Apartheid South Africa, there was no blockade preventing the import and export of goods into the black neighborhoods, right? Because white people were making money off of the black population, so you wouldn't do that. There was the same mass migration effect, 2.5 to 3.5 million. I just realized something. So I even said this in class earlier. So the history I learned was the largest forced mass migration in human history was South Africa, when it became apartheid, forced 2.5 to 3.5 million blacks to move out of white neighborhoods. And by the way, and Asians too. The Indian population was also separated out. Well, the vast majority of the 5 million Palestinians living in Gaza Strip and West Bank are themselves refugees forced out of the rest of Palestine. So that's actually probably a bigger population, because I would be surprised if it was more than 1.5 million people were actually from those two places. I bet 3.5 million are actually displaced refugees. Anyway, I mean, this is incredible. Anyway, all right, I'm over. So, any other questions?